Hey everybody, today our guest is Katherine Leviste, a California-born creative powerhouse whose journey spans research, music, and human expression. Welcome, Katherine.
Thanks for having me, Taran. I'm happy to share my stories about courage, belonging, and longing.
Awesome. Let's begin with a loaded question with the present, where you are now, and what led you here.
Yeah, so I started in healthcare and vision science, but I've become increasingly invested in how people, informations, and systems interact. Um, the new version of me will be channeled through CAT-RX, which is my way of exploring health, human systems, and the conditions that help humans flourish.
And and if we double down on that, the new version of you, what got you here? Can you talk about some of the deliberate or the unexpected pivots you have made to come to this new beginning? Hey, Kat, I lost you.
Yeah. Um, There was a little bit of a lag there. Um, yeah, so I would say that I've spent a decent amount of time in ophthalmology and research in that field. But during my time in academia, I convinced myself that creativity was going to become a hindrance to my work. So when I moved from California to Miami, I told myself, okay, we're going to put the photography aside, um, the drawing, the writing of poetry and other things, because these are whimsical things that don't really play a role in our lives, at least that version that I was entering into. But what ended up happening was I allowed this sort of fragmentation of self, and I separated pieces of myself. There was Catherine, the researcher, Catherine, the academic, the mentor, the mentee, and then the creative Catherine was kind of tucked away in the background. I had other outlets, um, and found ways to build that creative engine into community driven projects like IT, and ophthalmology community and podcasts. So um,
Yeah.
now that I'm in
Uh,
this
uh,
phase of,
I'm going to cut you here for 1 second. I know you talked about that defragmentation, and you gave us a hint about it in your head, right? Isn't
yeah,
defragmentation generate that optimality or the optimization in the modern society we need? Hey, I can do research. I can, part of me are doing things that are good for me, but I'm never whole. And you shared that in our initial conversation. Can you talk about when you realized that defragmentation was good, but was hurting the expressions of your self in ways uh, that was not making you whole?
right. It's a question that I didn't start asking myself until maybe last year or even the last 6 months. But it's something that I think a lot of immigrant kids grow up with. It's something that anyone who's faced any type of adversity where you've had to put yourself in a box and try to fit in, I think has had to compartmentalize themselves. Um, and there's a version of me that was the caretaker of the family, the oldest sibling, the youngest sibling, um, and there's the professional version of me and the creative version of me. And at times, all these versions were at odds with each other. So I'm really starting to realize the importance of moving towards an integrated self, which includes an integrated village, which includes not minimizing yourself and forcing yourself into spaces that no longer feel right. Um, and I think, we've kind of touched on the topic of hamsters, which I'm sure will come up. But
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
there's the concept of the hamster wheel, and something I've wondered about in the past months, whether we actually have agency in choosing which hamster wheel we hop onto, or if the hamster wheel is assigned to us. And I think
yeah,
we choose certain hamster wheels because they have guaranteed outcomes of success. But when you peel that back and ask, what is the true meaning of success? Am I defining success as my parents have projected on me? Am I defining success by how society defines success? And does success actually calculate, like include happiness and joy in the equation?
yeah. You touched on so many things there, but the one that we've talked about too, and the courage, right? The courage and the velocity of which hamster wheel we are stuck on and which hamster we feel we can get out of is
Hmm.
something that I find, laden in your stories, and the courage you took when you were in high school and created a hamster shelter, right? As a
Hmm.
kid, can you
Yeah.
walk us through what was in your head, and was it just the cuteness of hamster that got you, or how did you come up with the courage, especially as an immigrant family that I assume there would have been pushbacks when you bring in something that doesn't belong to you and you have to take care of it, and you didn't just have one, you had like a whole rack full of hamsters to deal with
I
after a
had a
while.
whole operation. Yeah. Much to my mom's chagrin. Um, yeah, so growing up in the Philippines, we always had animals. We had, lots of dogs, goats, um, things like that. There were always animals in the house. My dad had like a very cool saltwater tank. And my parents were biologists by training. So there was a lot of, talking about nature and biology growing up. And I think they were very encouraging of me learning how nature works. Um, so in fifth grade, I wrote a book on hamster keeping. I had my first hamster then. And I think a common thread for myself is I would have planted seeds years ago, and it's not until I revisit that seed, in some future date that I realize, oh, this has started blooming on its own. So it was time for the hamster seed to grow, I think, post middle school, the time between middle school and high school, it was that summer. And I realized, being an animal lover, that some of the local shelters here did take in hamsters and small animals, but they had to put them down if they had, you know, didn't have enough capacity. So um, I asked my mom, hey, can I start like a hamster rescue? And she goes, how are you going to start this hamster rescue? And I gave her my whole business model. I was like, well, people are trying to get rid of their hamsters because they're not well equipped to take care of them, or they don't have the bandwidth to take care of them. And instead of them ending up in the shelter where there's a chance of them getting put down, they could come to me. I know how to take care of them, and I can create the sort of like system or network for the hamsters to then find new homes. I can rehab them. I can see which ones can be hand tamed or not. I mean, I'm a hamster whisperer now, right? So
did you have a 1-800 hamster number so people could reach out to you?
I think I tried to. I don't know that Google Voice was around then, but I think I might have tried.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
like
I might have given them the landline. I don't remember.
it's a quite a feat considering a fifth grader coming up with a business plan and everything else. When there is no AI to help you, you must have gone through a lot of library trips to be able to come up with that with that
It
idea. But
was
man, what a courage.
Yeah, it was actually much easier than that. It was Craigslist. They had like an animal section on Craigslist. But
Oh,
but if I could
yeah.
paint a visual, imagine like an entire wall of the house being stacked in hamster cages. So at the peak, I think my mom enabled me to do this because, she thought she's crazy. There's no way like this would actually happen. But I had people as far as Berkeley and Oakland, and at the time we were living in Mountain View. I had folks, from the East Bay going, I have a cage of 11 hamsters. We started out with two, and now I don't know what to do with all of them. And there's a teenage brother in there somewhere too. So I'm like, okay, don't worry, I'll solve it. So yeah, we had a wall of cages, and I think at peak I had about 30 hamsters that summer. And my mom goes, "That's it. You have to shut this operation down. This is way out of control." Um, I even
Yeah.
purchased one of the hamsters intentionally. He was his name was Goliath. He was a European black bear hamster. So there's different breeds of them, right? They say that the smallest ones are the most neurotic, the Siberian hamsters. And I had one. The teenage brother was albino. He looked like he had walked through like an electric current because his hair was like spiky and he had, no melanin in his eyes, and he just seemed neurotic. And he was always running on his wheel. He would run so fast that he would catapult himself outside of the wheel. Yeah. And then this European black bear hamster, they're considered more exotic because they're harder to find. They're almost the size of a guinea pig. My mom drove me. I wasn't driving at this time, and she was like, "What are we doing?" And I was like, "I have to rescue this hamster from this person." And what I didn't tell her was I had to pay for him, but he was in like emaciated condition, very like lethargic, and the guy had him in the back of his car, and it was super hot in the summer. I was like, I can't leave knowing that he's like this. So I take him to my hamster rehab. I'm out of cages. Everything is so full already. And one rule of hamster keeping is you never pair two adult hamsters together, especially not of the same gender, especially, yeah, like, and completely different breeds too. So I
Yeah.
did an
Sounds like
experiment.
modern world.
Yeah, I did an experiment, and I had Avalanche, the neurotic one, and Goliath meet in a neutral space, so it's not territorial. They can't kill each other, and if they do, I can separate them quickly. But no, they sniffed each other and then they went on about their business. I was like, okay, maybe I'll try putting them in a neutral cage. As long as I had two wheels, I had a giant wheel for Goliath and a smaller wheel for Avalanche. They were fine, surprisingly. So I was like, ha, all those hamster books that I read, they were wrong. It's
Yeah.
possible. Or that there are exceptions. Maybe this isn't the rule, but there are exceptions. So, I mean, Avalanche still launched himself. He changed into a bigger hamster wheel and he still would run so fast, he would still launch himself off of that. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
And and I do not know the origin of hamster wheel, but you probably can give us more insights into it. Like if they don't have, like what do they do with the wheel? Are they just playing? Is an entertainment like how humans get Netflix 24/7? That's what hamster wheel is for hamsters.
I imagine it gives them some sort of like dopamine too. But yeah, they're supposed to have a certain amount of space based on their size. And some hamsters are diggers, some are not. But typically, it's good to give them a wheel to just exercise and get their energy out. And they're
Yeah.
nocturnal animals. So I kind of have a hamster right now too, actually. I had to move her downstairs a week ago because I think she's been driving me mad for the last months because she'll wake up in the middle of the night and make the most amount of noise possible. Um, and
Yeah.
now my sleep is so much better that she's in a different room.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that. They look similar to raccoons a little bit, especially with their spiky hairs. But I could be wrong. I don't have. Uh, I mean, I've not seen them outside the four walls of either zoos or outside in the nature, so don't know much about it. But I want to swirl back to your life a little bit and understand, when you had to quit the hamster wheel of research and give your spirit's expression, um, and that, have you, when you look at and you talked about it, like how do you find the velocity within yourself to get out of that grind, especially, comfortable, you're getting a comfortable future in research for the resources you want to live, but you give up everything. How do you go find the courage? Because it's very hard as humans to give up something for something that might not even exist, or it might be whimsical, as you said in the beginning.
Yeah, I would say that it was a massive identity shift, something that took over a year to rediscover. Because when you tie your identity to your career and that alone, it actually becomes a very dangerous game in that you can lose yourself in the process. Whenever you abandon other parts that were also important to you. So I think this whole phase has been a rediscovery of that maybe I want to build the next wheel. Maybe it's not even going to look like a wheel. Maybe it's going to become more like a plane. I don't know. Um, but it's really important to realize the type of vehicle that you're in and what you're pouring into. My passion for ophthalmology and research hasn't gone away. But increasingly, I've experienced the shift of wanting to solve problems in healthcare. But for the longest time, I think I was trying to solve it from within and playing within the sandbox of healthcare, which has a lot of bureaucracy and red tape, and you need this title and that title and that title. So I actually entertained going into medicine, um, and taking that long route, which is also very self-sacrificial. I have many doctor friends, and I've seen the toil and the effort that they've put in, that the healthcare system can kind of uh, break your soul in the process. And a lot of them are still recovering, or have have had to wrangle with that burnout.
Yeah,
Um,
the superhuman element of a doctor or the medical field makes it, yeah, the awe is there, but as you said, like the grind also takes its toll. Um, but I did what you were saying there. Sometimes a glass ceiling needs just a small pebble to knock it out, right? And you found that small pebble of creativity in the world today,
mhm.
where machines can whip up anything you desired, right? And so when you were going through this period, of course, that you must have your own doubts, and there were probably people in your circle that were your allies, and people that were probably, no, you can't quit being an ophthalmologist, which you are not quitting. How do you harmonize these feelings when you are going through such a tough decisions that has such an instrumental impact on the future you're going to create for yourself?
I'll be honest with you, this is extremely vulnerable because I've never said this like publicly. Last year, I wasn't sure that I was going to make it to my next birthday. It was that devastating for me. But when you realize that none of those skills have been lost, that all of your joy is still waiting to be tapped under like a well, basically. So you have to resurvey the landscape that you're in, the landscape of yourself, um, and find out where the vitality like sources are. because for so long you were tethered to something else. Um,
Yeah.
so
No, that tapping is such a key instinct of the human spirit that we can tap into, and into something beyond our imagination, and it can feed us and carry us away into the next world, uh, and even from our darkest corners into the light. what
and
what what
that's
does Yeah, go ahead.
I'll say that that's what has always drawn me into medicine is let me tie in like two things here because I've had recent conversations with friends and if we follow Myers-Briggs and all that, it's pop psychology, but fine, we'll entertain it. It says that I am an introvert these days, yeah. They're like, Kat, you talk to everyone. How can you possibly be an introvert? I'm like, I spend a significant amount of time alone and I actually tend to recharge alone, but I'm social. Your socialness does not determine whether you're like an introvert or extrovert, though at first glance it can look that way. It's actually how you recharge. Do you recharge more alone or around people? And I have to mentally prepare myself to be around people, actually. And you might be thinking, okay, Kat, what are you talking about? What does this have to do with medicine? I'll tell you. In trying to figure out this question, I realized that I had to develop the skill for medicine because I was in high school and college, I was mostly an introvert. Um, Miami brought out the extrovert in me. But prior to Miami bringing out the extrovert in me, in medicine, I had to learn those skills. I had to update my operating system because when you are dealing with people in their darkest hour, when you're around like all the family and their loved one is dying in front of you, there is so much implicit trust, knowledge, expertise, and like an instantaneous sort of collaboration between the healthcare provider and the family or the patient that happens in that moment where it's like you can almost throw credentials out the water. Like they're assuming that you are capable and competent enough, empathetic enough to be in that space for them to help guide them into what the next decision might be.
Yeah.
And ultimately, as someone in healthcare, you are looking out for that person, their family, the whole ripple effect where your decision could affect, not just the next hour, but the next 10 years of this person's life. So I've been
Yeah.
really fortunate to be in those spaces and to learn from those spaces. And it breaks me to see that the healthcare system, the medical education system is so broken and it breaks people in the process. And I'm just wondering, wow, is there another way to fix this? It's still very dogmatic, it's old school. But obviously, there's something in the methodology that works, see one, do one, teach one. But now that we're in an era where information is just expounding at like an impossible rate, how are the future doctors supposed to then use the old school curriculum with all this new knowledge and are expected to keep up? It's like we need a new vehicle. So I've decided that at this juncture, I'm going to step outside of the sandbox and build tools and resources to be integrated for the inside until someone, the gods of medicine, decide to overhaul the system from the ground up. It is unfortunately it's unfortunately too clunky and too intricate where if you move one piece, like the whole thing needs to be readjusted. Um,
Yeah,
so I
the
think
financial incentives are on the other side, but you're right that the world, especially with technology and machines doing a lot of laborious work, what is the role of a doctor or a medical provider in the well-being of humanity, and how to do it best is the question that is top of the mind for, I think, for humanity in general, right? Because we are growing, we are aging, and we are living more, and we are using more resources, right? So that is a good field to be in, to see what CAT can bring there. I'm excited to see what comes out of the systems you're going to build and think. But one thing
Mhm.
that you told me, yes, in our last conversation was this. I've never heard that, but I've probably lived all my life in this tall poppy ecosystem.
Oh,
Is
okay.
like right, and the creative knock of the spirit, I think is like tall poppy. It finds you no matter the distance we go to hide ourselves. You moved from California to Miami to discover yourself in ways that you would have never if you would have just stuck to closer to your home maybe.
Mhm.
Talk to us, in your perspective, this evolution of the wholeness and the oneness, that the pieces that you're putting together for yourself and expressing yourself, what creative adventures you are on, and what you're thinking in your creative path, uh, to make yourself more whole and more expressive in the world you live and own.
Yeah. So the tall poppy syndrome, I had just learned about that recently. I have a Kiwi friend who told me about it. And down in Australia and New Zealand, they have this thing called the tall poppy syndrome. So if you imagine a field of poppies, the tallest poppy is the one that sticks out and it's more likely to be targeted and picked. And I guess in that part of the world, you don't want that because we were talking about work and pitching yourself, right? And she was like, well, I'm from that part of the world. I don't know how to pitch myself. I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, we don't do that. We don't talk about ourselves there. You don't want to be the tall poppy there. I was like, huh, interesting. And she goes, yeah, here in America, you guys are groomed from sort of, the elementary days to speak up for yourselves, to kind of give an elevator pitch about it yourselves from the get-go. And I never really thought about that until I heard the phrase. So um, I guess I'm down in the grass again. I'm not a tall poppy at all. And I don't know that I want to be, but um, when you are, to use the metaphor, Taran, you garden, right? Some plants, some species of plants grow better around other plants. Some of them need to grow in their own season. And then this season, how I've been channeling my creativity is through music lately. Pre-Miami, it was very visual. I did editorial photography. I like directed my own shoots. I worked with models and things like that. Um, and then I also worked on Cybervision Labs, which was it was a nonprofit for emerging technologies that like we developed for community projects. Um, so I'm doing less visual things now, and I've always been fond of music. I played a little bit of piano growing up, but I just dabble. And I've always thought that DJs were very cool. They looked like they were having a blast. Um,
They control the
so
environment.
they do. And I am a professional people watcher and also a vibe curator. I think my superpower is connecting people and bringing people together. But I can also make people feel really comfortable, whether it's just, on one-on-one conversation or if I'm in a group setting. So I've always been passionate about psychology too. And I realized that music can be a very therapeutic, sort of embodied experience for people. I've spent a lot of time in therapy. And in therapy, you talk about your trauma and your trauma and your trauma and your trauma. When you are in I don't know, let's say like an outdoor music venue and they're playing music and stuff like that, you're just totally immersed in the moment and you're soaking it all in and you're creating new memories instead of reliving old memories that you're body remembers. There's this great book called The Body Keeps the Score, right? And
Yeah.
in my own unbreaking, if you will, I had to learn how to reboot my own nervous system and sort of rebuild it from the ground up. Because
Yeah.
in my reintegration, if you will, I felt like there were certain triggers that would set me off, and I'm just like, wow, I don't like
Yeah.
how I reacted to that.
Yeah, that
Um,
hamster wheel of trauma sometimes is hard for us as a brain, right? The brain to get out of its own self needs
yes.
it needs a creative influx, and music
Yeah.
is an auxiliary for that. It can take you to a level where you can synchronize yourself without the past that is impending on your body heavily, right? And that's one of the reason
Yeah.
music such a connective force across the world. In no matter what music you listen to, it has an impact. In my belief system, Sikhism, everything is coded in music. So which we are lucky, and I find something, right, and I listen.
Mm,
Everything is because we believe in oneness, and the way to carry that oneness is through the rhythm of music, the rhythm of, because it doesn't need a
mm,
medium. You don't need an understanding to understand medium music. Your soul already is attuned to understand that.
right.
Um, yeah, I know, but I know who to call for my next party. Is I know Kat is the person who can create the vibe. Catherine is the person who can create the vibe. Uh, Moving
Yeah.
on to your creative channels, and to our next thing that I wanted to pick a little bit of. We touched on it, and a little bit is the tap of courage, right? You always have that knack to get to courage, no matter the ups and the downs that you've gone through. And
Mm.
how do you find that tap of the courage, and how do you nourish them, right? What is your what does it look like in Catherine's daily life to make sure that tap doesn't get away, hidden in the depth somewhere, but also how do you nourish this now, since you're so aware of your state as the oneness you want to live.
Yeah. I think that I had touched on sort of the landscape of yourself, right? Like exploring your own mountain, if you will. And if there was a massive earthquake that happened or a landslide of some sort, you need to become your own sort of navigator, get back on the terrain and see how the geography has changed. And so you are remapping the environment. You're remapping how this mountain works. Maybe an old path that you were stepping on is no longer a viable path, and you need to forge a new one altogether. Um, so what was the question
Yeah,
again?
yeah, no, that's actually, yeah, your navigation, and what I like what you said there, right? You have to find your own navigation when the landscape has changed, and
Yeah.
and finding that navigation is the courage, that
Ah,
is, yeah, is what your story, your life is journey is so full of,
right,
uh,
right.
right,
And I
and
think that's maybe where the courage comes from is the mountain will keep shifting. And we have to accept that that is always going to be part of the living aspect of it. But we as the navigators need to just take the next step.
yeah,
So instead of maybe having an existential crisis, just ask yourself, what do I want the next 20 minutes to look like? It could mean that you're going to have a mental breakdown for 20 minutes, or maybe you go have a cup of tea and you sit outside in the sun for a little bit. Or maybe you go take your books on a walk. That's my new favorite thing. So I don't have a big animal I can walk right now. So I've started taking my books on a walk
it's a
because
smart.
if I stay home and I read my books, I'm curled up on the couch. I'm yeah, getting lost in the book, but I'm curled up on the couch. This way, I've found this like habit stack works really nicely for me where I'm getting sun, I'm getting movement, and I'm powering through books. So, um,
That's
yeah,
a
it's
good
been
idea.
something I've looked forward to in terms of also, yeah, like honoring my analog life because I feel like, especially here in Silicon Valley, we're so entrenched in technology that I try to be mindful of stepping away from tech and making tech my source of dopamine. I don't think we do enough of like a dopamine audit in our lives, where you know certain social media, for example, is really designed to hijack those dopamine systems in the brain so that young people are just scrolling infinitely on this doom scroll loop. And I've been off social media for a
That's
few
our
years now.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's our hamster wheel as humans, right? That we can't. It doesn't look like a wheel, but it's endless. Uh,
Yeah.
right, and yeah, no, that's. Thank you for sharing that, and yeah, we're almost at the tail end of our conversation here. But first of all, I want to thank you for coming. And
Mhm.
it's called the mountain in us, and one of the reasons we call it mountain in us is to bring stories like yours here. But I didn't pay you to say the mountain keeps shifting, so
No, not at all.
but I'm just yeah. I mean, we live in the land of earthquakes, so this is such a great conversations that you've opened up yourself here and shared some real instincts about how to find and live a life of courage, belonging, and longing. um, any last words for our audience? Anything you would like to share uh, before we wrap up here today?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so much of our lives have been ruled by tech, by work, by these outside forces that I think we need to be mindful of. Take account of what hamster wheel you're on, and remember that health and humanity are still at the core of why we do what we do. And don't forget the happier question. Don't forget to tend to your village, be able to practice like the leadership of self and lead yourself first before you try and lead others, and nourish those high fidelity relationships, because to use a sound analogy, you have high fidelity like low noise channels, right? And then you have these other channels that might be low fidelity and has a lot of noise, right? And when you think of your own mind, there's so much outside noise happening. You don't know if it's coming from work or the news, just daily life, but you have to figure out how to turn off the outside noise. Once you can turn that off, then you can listen to yourself and realize how much of your own brain is contributing to that inside noise. And once you can control the dials of the inside noise, then you can start, playing with the symphony of life. And um, the cacophony is as loud as we allow it to be. So if you want coherent sound, find it within yourself first.
Thank you. We'll end it there. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing all your insights and the stories with us. Have a great day, Catherine.
Thank you, Taryn. Take care.